Welcome all. Now I shall talk about variables and parameters in Bash. So variables, they're basically labels or some sort of names used to represent certain values or sets of values stored somewhere in the computer's memory. We can use variables both for arithmetic operations and string phrasing. This we will work out through a series of examples as always. Now, what is important to understand is that the variable name and its value are not the same. Let's say we have a variable num, or number basically, or just let's do a better example. Let's say that we have a variable called var, so the var. Then var represents the variable name. To get the value of the variable, we used to add a $sign as a prefix to the var, to the variable name. So this we have used many times by now in the examples, but let's just go ahead and see how that actually works. Let me just go ahead and explain that part in particular. So VIM, and now we're still going to stick to the first. I don't know, when we get to the major chapter change, like when we skip on from basics onwards, I think I shall change the script name to second or something like that. But you can name it whatever you want. Mine is first.sh. If yours is something else, that's perfectly fine. So as before, we can type in, I always click on the second screen where I have my notes, so sometimes don't click it immediately here. Excellent, so now we're in insert mode. Let's type in var equals 10, and if we echo var, that will actually not echo the value of this. It will just echo literally letters VAR, and down below we can use what we have been using thus far, var. So these are two completely different statements with dramatically different effects. You see, it will output var, and down below it will output 10. So the name of a variable is not the same as the value of the variable. So we have to use this $sign as a prefix if we want to work with variables. However, there are some situations when a variable doesn't actually require a $sign. So let's just go over them. The first one, can you spot the first one on the screen now? The first one is in the declaration part. So you just type in the declaration and then you assign a value to it. So obviously you don't need a $sign here to assign a value to a variable. Now there is something called unset, and we can say num. Well, not num, we can say var. In my notes over here it's num, but for some reason I placed it num, I suppose, because I'm using numbers as demonstrations for demonstrative purposes, but doesn't really matter. So if we type in unset var, this will actually make var into null. So if we type in echo var, you see, there is literally nothing that is printed out. So it's not being converted to number 0, but null. So there is nothing in it. There are some cases of exporting, but we're going to do that later on. I don't want to burden you with it now during the section that deals with basics. That's a little bit more of an advanced subject. And there is just another example which I would like to illustrate before you. There are some others, but as I said, we'll deal with them as the course progresses. But if we have these parentheses, then you will not need them. Which is basically, again, setting the value. If you remember, we used to use var1, and we've set var1 equal to some number. I don't know, let's say 4. And down below, we have created these parentheses where we have stated that var2, where we made var2 dependent on var1 value. and then we said like lesser than, I don't know, 10, lesser than 10, then we shall place a question mark 1 and then 0 here, and then we shall close these, and down below you can type in echo var2. So you see, we didn't need a $sign here. So we are assigning a value here, obviously, okay, but what of this? So we're just using the name. So in situations like these, you won't need a $sign. These are very specific cases. But I suppose you're going to know it by the rules, but eventually it will just become second nature to you and you won't actually think about it that much. It will just seem right. The same way you can speak English language. Let's say you were born into it or you have learned it, and after a certain time of speaking, you basically stop thinking about it. You basically stop thinking whether the grammar is correct or false, and 90% of the time it turns out to be correct and people can understand you. Well, this is also a type of a language that you use and that you learn. So after you've learned it, you're obviously not going to rethink grammar every time. Rather, instead, it's just going to come intuitively to you. Okay, so let's move on. We can assign variables in 3 ways. First way, and the most obvious way, is the one that we have just used. So we have stated var1 equal to 4. Now there is another way in which we can assign variables, and that is from the read statements. So the read statement will actually read the user input, will actually take the user input and put it into a variable. Here's how that looks like. This is also used rather often. Read, and we shall state var2. But before this, let's just make it meaningful. I mean, there's no technical requirement for this, but this is for our convenience. Echo, type in some value. Excellent. And then we're going to say read var2, and after that we shall echo var2. Fantastic. Now let's run the script. It says type in some value, and it's waiting for us. Actually, let's quit it. Let me just clear the screen so you can see it better. Type in some value, and now it's waiting for me to actually type it in. So what shall I do? Well, let's type in 8. And there you go. It prints 8 out onto the screen. Very simple. So we can also assign values to variables in this fashion, which is very nice. The third is, well, it's kind of used in a loop. Here, let me show you. It's not kind of used in a loop. It is used in a loop, but to an extent, I guess. Look at this. If I, for example, use a for loop, we will deal with loops separately, so I don't have to worry about that. So for var in, I don't know, 1, 2, 3. So this var is basically a variable, and 1, 2, and 3, they represent a list of arguments for the loop. And this is going to go through 3 iterations, and variable var will take on the next value in the list. For each iteration, this variable will take, let's say in the first iteration it will take the value of 1, second iteration value of 2, third iteration the value of 3. Here, let me just show you this. It's rather simple. Echo $var, done. Right? And there you go. So it prints echo var. Well, let's make it even clearer than this, and let's state echo $var. Oops. Let's do it like this. What does the matter? Oh, okay. Value of var. Sorry if I misspelled that. Value of var is excellent. So let's go ahead and write that, and let's run the script again. So it says value of var is 1, value of var is 2, value of var is 3. So that is how you assign these values to, that is how you assign values to a variable. Anyway, I'm going to cut the tutorial here, bid you farewell, and we shall continue on in the next one.